and then you would want to like create a goal and set a plan for your chord progression sequence. So here's a circle of fifths, and as I talked about in my previous lecture, basically you can build chords off of a monophonic melody line with this simple chord progression. And so I listed the major and minor chord progressions in the circle of fifths. So it would be basically major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, major 5/7, minor 6, minor 7, 7 diminished. And then for the minor circle of fifths progression, it'd be a minor 1, minor 2, diminished, major 3, minor 4, major 5, major 5/7, major 6, and 7 diminished. So as you can tell, from the major and minor, all of the capital letters are basically flip-flops for the other key signatures. So, except for the 7 diminished and the 2. So yeah, they're basically just flip-flops. So when you're given a monophonic melody line, you basically want to set a goal. So this is basically how you do that. You determine what style of music you want to follow, whether it's like reggae, jazz, pop music, classical, and then you want to set a tempo and also a length limit, so you don't just keep building chords and it never ends. So the longer progressions basically have more time or more chance to express your creativity, and it might be a less solid progression depending on what chords you put in there, but it definitely is going to be a little more creative. Then the shorter progressions tend to use more common progressions, like a 1, 4, 5, 1, or like some of the other common progressions that we listen to. Alright. So you already know basically what your musical style is, your key signature, your tempo, and how many measures you're going to need to fill with your chords. Now you want to find out what your starting and ending chords are going to be, the flow of the music, and any cadences you want to put in, which is basically just an ending progression. So we're going to do some activities in just a minute. Alright. So determining what chords you want to put into your composition. You have to remember all the melodic and harmonic tendencies. Then a good way to start off is just to do 1 chord per measure, and remember all the common tones within each chord that you're going to do. So basically, if you have a 1 chord and a 5 chord, you're going to have, let's say, in C major, C, E, G, and then the next one is going to be G, B, D. And so a common tone in that is G. So basically, when you're building your chord progression, you're going to want to keep those 2 notes on the same line so that all the other notes can flow around it and that you can have 1 solid line to lay a foundation for your progression. And then, yeah, if you have to invert chords, which is basically just switching around the notes but have the same notes in there, then you can do that as well. Okay. So this is a little summary before we get started building our own chord progressions. Basically, you want to remember the common progressions and tendencies, set a goal and create a plan, remember the circle of fifths and its progression, invert chords for a smoother progression, and be creative and expressive. Alright. So on the sheets of paper in front of you, you can use the bottom of the evaluation sheet. What we're going to do is basically build a chord progression off of this given melody line. And as you see, for most monophonic melody lines that you're going to see that require a chord progression to go along with them, the first and the last note are probably going to be the same, if not, one of the notes in the chord that's already given at first. So right here we have a D and a D at the very end, even though they're an octave apart. So basically what we're going to do is take it measure by measure and just find out which chords would go along with the note in that particular measure. So for the first measure, we have a D, a B, and another D. So since we are in the key of D major, a 1 chord would probably be best put there, since we have a D, E, and then the last note would be a G. Or G, B. Alright. Okay, so this is basically going to be our first chord, is a 1 chord. Then the second measure, we can put a 5 chord there because you have a C, an A, and a 5 chord would be A, C. And the next one would be B, G, B, so a 4 chord would fit there appropriately. The next one you can do a 3, a minor 3 chord, which is not used very often in simple progressions, but you can just throw it in there, get creative. So we have an A and an F, and in a 3 chord, you would have F, A, C. And then you always want to end your progression with the same chord that you started with. So we have a 1 chord at the very end. Alright. And these are some other options for chord progression. You can add like a 5-7 in there instead of just doing a regular 5 chord, or here is one last example. So this one we're all going to do together. So who reads music in here? I know Brian does. Keith a little bit. Alright. Okay, so basically what we're going to do, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 measures. And the first measure has an E and a B. So since we're in the key of E flat major, you can go ahead and write that down. That'll come in handy. Since we're in the key of E flat major, we're going to start with a 1 chord. So I'll go ahead and give you that. So what would our last chord be? Good job, Blake. Yay. Alright, so we already have 2 chords in this progression. So the first one a 1 chord and the last one a 1 chord. So we have all these other notes in between. So I'll go ahead and tell you what these notes are going to be. Let's see, we have a G, F, and E. I'm going to come over to the piano to hear what this is going to sound like. Okay, so we're in the key of E flat major. So this is going to be a 1 chord. So I'll go ahead and play that along with the melodies that's already printed there. So that will be the first measure. So that sounds pretty okay, right, so far? So for the second measure, does anybody have any ideas of what we could put there? You can just shout out number. Which we have a G, F, and an E. You basically want to think of all of the chords, 1 through 7, that could possibly contain any of these notes that we have in this measure. So we have an E and a G, and that would be in a 1 chord. So we could possibly do that. Does anybody agree? Alright. So let's see what a 1 chord would sound like. Okay, so I'm going to start from measure 1 and go through measure 2. Does anybody have any suggestions for the third measure? We have a B, an A, and a G. So this measure contains a G and a B, which is also found in a 1 chord. But if we want to switch it up a little bit, we could try maybe a 5 chord or something like that. So 5 chord, those notes to it. It's a little bit more dissonant, but it also is in the middle of our progression. So as long as we get back to our one chord by the end, then it's conclusive and it feels right. So let's go on to the fourth measure. Basically we have an E, a B, and a G. So anybody have any suggestions for this fourth measure that we have here? We could either do a one chord, that would be E, G, B. We could do a two chord, do a three chord. Any suggestions? Yay, play! Awesome. So let me play that for you and so you can hear what it sounds like. Okay. So our progression's not quite finished yet. We said that we wanted a one chord at the very end. And since I can't play the exact same notes that I played in the previous measure, what do you think I could do to help that along? To make it a smoother progression.
Invert?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to invert the last chord. So I'm going to go from the fourth measure to the last measure, and I will invert the chord so you can hear what that sounds like. I'll add a little bass to it. Alright. Alright, does that sound conclusive to everyone? Yeah. Awesome. So this is basically how you build a harmonic progression. This one is a very, very simple one, and it uses mostly one chords. As you get further into learning about chord progressions, you can throw in all sorts of different chords, 2s and 3s and 6s and all that. So go ahead and come over here. Alright, so these are just some different suggestions of how to write. Thank you very much.